Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration and diaspora. So, today we are going to start our discussion on a new novel entitled Lajja by Taslima Nasreen. So, Lajja is a novel written originally in Bengali by the writer activist Taslima Nasreen, who is a writer from Bangladesh. The word Lajja, which is common in various Indian languages, means shame in Bengali. So, the title of the novel Lajja means shame. The novel was first published in 1993 in Bengali language, and then it was subsequently banned in Bangladesh. In the preface of the novel, Taslima Nasreen asserts that the reason behind writing Lajja was because she detests fundamentalism and communalism. The novel is based on the events that happened in Bangladesh soon after the demolition of the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya, India on 6th of December 1992. So, before we proceed further, we would just like to look at who Taslima Nasreen is. Taslima Nasreen, born on 25th of August 1962, is a Bangladeshi writer, feminist, secular humanist and activist. She is known for her writings on women's oppression, and she has vehemently criticized the dogmatic nature of religions, the indoctrinations that religions. She is known for vehemently criticizing the dogmatic nature of institutionalized religions, and her works have time and again faced the brunt of harsh criticism by the orthodox sections of society for their strong stances, for their strong points of view against sexism and fundamentalism. So, this novel Lajja subtly suggests that in the aftermath of the event of demolition of Babri Masjid, there is a violent repercussion seen in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, communal feelings were on the rise and secularism was under threat, under shadow. And this had led to the steep drop down of humanistic feelings and the secular values. So, we see that the Bengali immigrants have trickled inside the border of India at various periods against different historical backdrops, at different junctures in history, in the immediate decades following the partition. First, we see hordes of Bengali immigrants coming during and after the Direct Action Day in August 1946, Direct Action Day, which is also known as the Great Calcutta Killings, as well as the Week of Long Knives, after the Muslims had forced the two nation concept. So, this Calcutta killing had happened after Jinnah had, established his two nation theory. And then we see that in 1948, further immigration happens after the annexation of the Muslim princely state of Hyderabad. In 1949, 1950, it further happens with the anti-Hindu riots in states such as Khulna and Barisal. Mid 1950s, it happens with the national language issue and adaptation of the Islamic constitution. And then we see further Bengalis emigrating from what is today known as Bangladesh because of the theft of the holy hair from the Hazrat Bal Mosque in Kashmir in 1964. And then finally, there is a great exodus during the War of Liberation, also known as the Mukti Yuddha, and the formation of Bangladesh in 1971. So, Direct Action Day, and then annexation of Hyderabad, and then the riots in Khulna and Barisal, the national language issue and adaptation of Islamic constitution, and further the theft of holy hair from the Hazrat Bal Mosque. All these factors have periodically led to the emigration of the Bengalis from what is today known as Bangladesh at different junctures of time in history. So, the Bangladesh government had banned this novel titled Lajja, written by Taslima Nasreen 2 months after the book was published. Regarding Lajja, Taslima Nasreen proclaims, and I quote, the book does not speak of religion, it speaks about humanity. Lajja speaks not of hate but love. Lajja asks for equality, empathy, and freedom, unquote. So, this is what Nasreen proclaims in the preface of Lajja in the 20th anniversary edition by Taslima Nasreen, which has been translated by Anchita Ghatak. According to Pranjal Pratim Bodua, Taslima Nasreen's Lajja qualifies as an essential study within the collection of the trauma narratives because it recounts the horrid experiences of displacement and the disillusionment and anxiety that had befallen on the displaced victims. Through this novel, Nasreen portrays the diverse shades of communal riots which happened in Bangladesh as a reaction to the Babri Masjid incident. It is worth mentioning the strong characters that have been presented in the novel, who have negotiated their socio-communal identities in the face of the political crisis and a serious situation. So, against the devastating fallout in Bangladesh, Nasreen dedicated the book, I quote, from Lajja, to the people in Indian subcontinent, unquote, and beginning the text with the words that let another name of religion be humanism. So, Nasreen begins the text with the following words, let another name of religion be humanism. Nasreen states in Lajja, I quote her here, ironically, all religions point towards one goal, peace. Yet it is in the name of religion that so much blood is shed and so many people have suffered. It is indeed a pity that even in the close of 20th century, we have had to witness such atrocities all in the name of religion, unquote. The most interesting part in this novel is the seamless entanglement of the twin threads of fact and fiction in an articulate manner. So, this literary device where fact and fiction are interspersed and they run parallelly metamorphoses the idea of reuniting the opposite poles in order to arrive at a focal point where it is almost a challenge for the reader to clinically separate the fact from the fiction. So, they are so well interspersed, they are so well interwoven, the fact on the one hand and the fiction on the other, that it's very difficult to separate the two, to tell the fact from the fiction. So, one can even understand, or one can even read Lajja as a factual fiction. A factual fiction refers to a category of fiction where the story is heavily influenced by historical events or real life occurrences. But it is crucial to understand that these facts are always incorporated into the work of fiction. So, in other words, to increase the effectiveness of the fiction, of the story, or delve further into a certain subject or into a certain problem or issue in hand, the author make use of artistic choices and the author may deploy poetic freedom regarding timelines, characterization and events. Although factual fiction may not strictly adhere with historical records, this blending of facts and fiction can provide an intriguing and a very, strong narrative point of view, and factual fiction can come up with certain very viable points of view that speaks to the real life problems in our society. So, Lajja opens at a juncture where there was an immense amount of crisis in the lives of the Hindu families living in Bangladesh. The manner in which the novel opens lays the scope for the readers to directly look into the psychological underpinnings of the characters amid a series of socio-political events whose epicenter is outside the geographic and political borders of Bangladesh. So, Lajja is not just a political novel as it apparently seems to be, but it is also a psychological work as it carefully examines the psyche of each character in order to portray their fear, trauma, and hysteria from within. The plot of the novel generally revolves around four characters from the Datta family. The protagonist, named Suranjan Datta, his father Sudhamay Datta, his mother Kiranmoyi Datta, and his sister Nilanjana Datta. So we see that Suranjan is born and brought up as well as gets his education from Bangladesh, and so he does not want to get dislocated in the face of the turmoil. The dislocation will disrupt and disturb his sense of seamless harmony, and it will change his perceived identity of himself, and it will actually unsettle his locatedness in the socio-historical context of time and space. So, a person builds his or her identity through an intricate connection with the homeland, with the place where one has, taken birth, where one is born, and where one has grown up, where one has received education and training. So, this will all change in a day if he has to leave Bangladesh in the face of turmoil and if he has to emigrate to India. And he really does not want to do that. In spite of millions of Hindus migrating out of Bangladesh to save their lives against the brazen assault by the local radical masses, the novel shows that the Datta family has the nerve, they have the determination in not being thwarted down on the face of crisis. They choose to stick to their homeland, they choose to, maintain their claim and their ownership. They choose to maintain their sense of ownership and their claim to the homeland where they are born and where they grew up. So, that's the kind of crisis which is at the heart of this novel Lajja. Suranjan's father Sudhamay Datta thinks that one should live and die in their own motherland rather than abandon the innate native identity and accept displacement and dislocation and further end up being a refugee in some railway platform. So, Suranjan's father echoes his sentiment. Sudhamay Datta feels that it is better to live and die in one's own land where one was born rather than be displaced and be reduced to a refugee who is begging for some doles and landing up in some railway platform in India. On the other hand, in the novel we see the female members such as Kiranmoyi and Nilanjana. They have rather a different perspective about displacement. They feel that one should get along with the current situation, with the demand of the current situation and circumstances, and they should deal with their current problem with a practical outlook rather than an emotional one. So, Nilanjana is of the view that rather than being sentimental over the nostalgia that have seemingly flooded the mind of Sudhamay, one needs to address the current situation in hand with some degree of judiciousness. So, the situation that the Datta family is facing requires them to either seek immediate refuge into some other households, essentially that of a Muslim family, or they would be required to leave the country altogether and become a part of the mass exodus, the Hindu mass exodus. According to Nilanjana, in the face of such imminent existential crisis that the family is going through, remaining trapped in the quagmire of nostalgic belongingness, remaining trapped in some kind of a nostalgic sentimental feeling and clinging on to one's past memories in the homeland is nothing short of a suicidal decision, because it could become a deadly decision at that point in time to stay back in Bangladesh for a Hindu family such as the Dattas. It would be more pragmatic for them to emigrate to the Indian part of Bengal, which is the West Bengal. So Kiranmai, being the mother in the family, tries to negotiate the varying standpoints of the family members in order to arrive at a consensus. Despite the differences in opinion, a common feeling that connects and binds them all is a sense of resentment. So, a sense of resentment towards losing one's identity and a looming, hovering fear of being killed. Regarding Taslima Nasreen's Lajja, Pavel Mukherjee comments, I quote Mukherjee here at length, Nasreen takes the pain to keep a record of numerous newspaper articles, incorporate them within the narrative to show the shame, the lajja of humanity. It was not only a matter of communal violence that drove the Hindus out of their homes in Bangladesh, it was also a serious breach in the faith one person can have on the other. The shame lies not in raping women only, but taking women as the easiest target for crude physical satiation in the name of religion and ideologies. Lajja addresses the dark realities of the violence, which is not an innocent, spontaneous outburst against a community, but has along with it the ulterior motives of gratifying the greedy desires of property, money, and women. Unquote. So, here at this point, in the light of what Pavel Mukherjee very correctly asserts, we need to understand the difference between spontaneous, communal tensions and a pogrom or a riot. So, a popular sentiment of communal disharmony and hostility, which is by and large immune to open assaults, is fundamentally different from calculated pogroms and riots, which are pre-organized, premeditated by major actors and involve economic and physical capital. So, the isolated incidents of religious tiffs and prejudices results in a sense of anxiety and fear about the rival community. So, we see the rival community through the lens of certain exaggerated myths. We see them through a negative lens, and consider them in terms of certain negative pejorative values which are not true. So, that can amount to the popular sentiment of communal hostility. However, such hostile feelings or such, rivalrous attitudes do not automatically lead to structured pogroms and riots. In order for pogroms and riots to happen, the state actors sponsor the events and they are very, very calculated and premeditated. A riot and a pogrom, by virtue of its characteristic disorder, makes accommodation for realization of individual goals in the guise of collectivity. So, what we see that within the members of, troublemakers, among the members of troublemakers or the members that are perpetrating violence, there are different motives, underlying motives. So, we see that beneath this guise of collectivity and mass pogrom and riots, there are certain underlying motives. It could be looting and pillaging houses, it could be abducting women. And so, the personal motives inciting the crimes during these pogroms and riots are given religious, caste, class or ethnic meanings. Some person, for example, who is part of a rioting group might not be interested in the religious ideology, but is interested more in looting shops and making some economic benefits out of the entire, tumultuous situation. So, from Lajja, now we move on to our next text, which is Narayan Wagle's novel Palpasa Cafe. The Palpasa Cafe exists as a new narrative treatment in the history of Nepalese literature. It is for the first time that Narayan Wagle, who is a journalist residing in Nepal and who writes for a Nepalese newspaper, explores Nepal and writes about Nepal. So, in the prologue, Vogle tells that he is planning on writing a book which is inspired by his friend Drishya, who gets kidnapped. So, Drishya's story begins with his meeting a Nepalese girl named Palpasa, who has come for a trip to India. Drishya and Palpasa have a number of meetings, and there seems to be a spark, an immediate spark between them, but neither of them pursue the relationship further. So, the narrative further moves ahead with the protagonist Drishya moving to Kathmandu. At Kathmandu, Drishya has a chance meeting with Palpasa again. So, we see that they start seeing each other at Kathmandu, but neither of them takes the relationship further. After some time, Drishya has a by chance meeting with his friend from college named Siddharth, who says that he is a Maoist in hiding and asks for shelter. So, this friend from his college named Siddharth is on a hideout and he asks for shelter from Drishya. Drishya and Siddharth start talking with each other regarding the current scenario of their nations. They both disagree on many points, and finally, Siddharth challenges Drishya to meet the world that the Maoists have created. So, they both disagree on many points during their discussion, and finally, Siddharth challenges Drishya to visit the world that the Maoists have created. So, we see that Drishya accepts this challenge and treks the hilly regions under the insurgent control. He visits many villages, including the village from where he belongs, and he soon finds that his childhood friend had died due to war. So, it's a very morbid kind of a situation or a scenario where Drishya goes back to his native village. Near the end of the journey, Siddharth gets killed in front of him because Drishya mistakenly points him out to the army. Drishya is really heavy hearted on his ride back to Kathmandu, and there again he meets Palpasa. So, we see that Drishya is very heavy hearted about the entire incident, and on his way back to Kathmandu, he meets Palpasa again, who is on her way to make a documentary on the war. So, however, in the course of this narrative's progression, we see that Palpasa gets killed when the bus explodes due to a mine. And so, Drishya survives because he was out of the bus. He survives accidentally. Following Palpasa's death, Drishya returns to Kathmandu and tries to continue with his life. However, Palpasa's death haunts him for a long time, and he feels a bit at peace only when he completes a series of paintings titled Palpasa Cafe. So, Drishya returns to Kathmandu and tries to continue with his life. However, Palpasa's death haunts him for a long time, and he feels a bit at peace only when he is able to complete a series of paintings titled Palpasa Cafe. Later, he gets kidnapped and his whereabouts are unknown. In the epilogue of this novel, writer Vogle meets with a girl named Gemini, who is searching for her lost friend, who happens to be Palpasa. So, at the beginning of this novel, the character's tourist ventures happen to start in Goa, which happens to be one of the prime locations for the travelers who travel to India from all over the world. Drishya and Palpasa visit the historical museum of Goa, which depicts the theme of postmodern travel. So, postmodern travel narratives cross the geographic, cultural, and textual boundaries. Rather, we could say that they transcend these boundaries, thereby offering new ways of mapping the geographical and the textual spaces. So, postmodern travel literature focuses on the inability to orient oneself in a world where the boundaries have already blurred. So, Drishya and Palpasa's journey to Kerala defines displacement as a continuous action, and both of them hope to see each other in Kathmandu back at home. So, there is a reference to the modern travel in which the traveler finally reaches the destination from where he had begun. And travel as a metaphor refers to the journey from birth to death, from the starting point and then being back to it once again. So, in the novel, Drishya tries to create an imaginary homeland where he goes, and this is substantiated by the following statement: "We Nepalis can't do without rice, no matter where we are." Unquote. So it's not the I who speaks here. Instead, through this statement, the collective nostalgia for any Nepalis in another place outside one's homeland is portrayed and kind of celebrated. Palpasa, unlike other women travelers who are believed to be transgressive, appears as a determined woman with a desire to travel. Her nostalgia for homeland is evident when she says that she would prefer east to west for the gap that it provides to enhance her creativity. So she is a determined woman and she has her own preference. She prefers east over west because it offers a gap which enables her to enhance her creativity. So the travel made by Drishya to the countryside after getting inspired through the words of his Maoist friend Siddharth tends to be a back home experience. This is the time in the novel when he is visiting his native village. So unlike the journey he made to Goa, Drishya's desire to travel rests only as a motivation to explore and to study the conditions back in his native village after it gets stuck by Maoism. And Drishya narrates, I quote at length from the book, "Everything in the village brought back memories. I remembered the harvest season when I used to sleep on a bed of hay beneath a blanket of hay. We used to whip our ox to make it walk faster on the grain and to jump on a coal to produce mustard oil. In winter, we used to drink hot sugarcane juice. I looked at the mound where the coal used to be. Tears came to my eyes." Unquote. Travel, displacement and nostalgia are the elements, the chief elements which function trilaterally in the previously mentioned lines by Drishya. The journey acts as a displacement to his geographical setting, and it also acts as a revisiting of the mental setting about the old image of his countryside. Drishya laments the beauty of the past, which results in a feeling of nostalgia for his homeland. Drishya declares himself to be the ambassador of the future growth in Nepal. According to critic Susan Robertson, I quote, "Travelers are people who put themselves, if only for short periods of time, in the situation of being strangers and who derive enjoyment from this status." Unquote. So, travelers who portray a sketch of their own homeland are likely to exoticize the place and their own position in that once known place. The whole experience is very exotic, very, out of the familiar, very different from the familiar. So the whole experience is very exotic and a departure from the familiar. The displacement sought through travel gives the tourist a confidence to reveal and explore himself. The mental and spiritual freedom experienced is a way of momentarily forgetting and getting away from the worries of human life. Drishya states, I quote from the book again, "My forgetfulness was probably a combination of the relaxed atmosphere, my own mood, and the fact that I had drunk so much wine. These things happen in a place where you lose your identity and become just another anonymous tourist, unquote. So travel equips Drishya to conceal his identity for some time and be a stranger in the land. The traveler in the novel posits an ambiguous position through recounting the first person narrative with another name. This I in the novel is hidden between the writer and the traveler's entity. Seeing things for oneself, therefore, becomes the greatest motivation for travel. So, Palpasa, on the other hand, wishes to be a nun and wants herself to be active in nunnery if she fails in documentary filmmaking. She states, I quote, I want to understand things, I want to know myself. So, exploring spaces and places becomes a metaphor for and becomes a pretext for exploring the different aspects of oneself, the different hidden aspects, the different hidden possibilities within oneself. Palpasa admits that it is for the first time that she reveals her identity to another person. Thus, the status of being two strangers enable Drishya and Palpasa to understand each other and ultimately to become free humans. The traveler writer often has a feeling of alienation in the new or in the foreign environment which reflects in his or her subject of writing. This feeling of alienation and a newness in the new or foreign land signifies that there is a mental and physical displacement or dislocation that occurs when the traveler visits a foreign place. Encountering a new culture could be seen as a method of conditioning and altering all the preconceived ideas that the traveler writer previously had about a new culture. So, traveling becomes a way of altering and revisiting the preconceived ideas about a new culture that a writer traveler has through the very many experiences that he undergoes in the course of travel. So, these reflections and discoveries make notable changes in turn in the texture of the travel narrative. So, what the traveler is undergoing in terms of experiences, the changes in the traveler's ideas, the changes in the traveler's understanding about a new culture reflects in the texture of the travel narrative. With this, I would like to stop our lecture here today and let's meet with a new topic in our next lecture. Thank you.